Everybody, welcome back to Miles and Mentors. We have an excellent episode lined up for you today. We have Kristy Knichel, the CEO and owner of Knichel Logistics. We're going to tap into the lived and learned knowledge she's gained throughout her career in the industry, pass that information on to you to found that firm foundation in starting your business. So stick with us. We have a great episode lined up right after this on Miles and Mentors.
Welcome to Miles and Mentors, the podcast that humanizes trucking, getting real-life advice and insights from logistics professionals from all over the industry. We sit down with those seasoned mentors who have put in the miles with a mission to pass on the knowledge gained from years in the industry to you. Now buckle up and enjoy the show.
Hey, Kristy, thanks so much for joining in today.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, fantastic. How's everything going in your world these days?
It's going good, but a lot of work having to deal with, in regards to the market here in transportation and just growing, to be quite honest. Actually, we're growing, so we're having some growing pains.
Hey, that's good problems to have. Problems nonetheless, but good problems to have.
Yep.
I really appreciate you coming on today, giving us a little bit of time out of your busy schedule to kind of tap your brain a little bit.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate you having me on. I have 28 years behind me, so a lot of miles.
Yeah. All right, fantastic. Well, for those that may not know who you are, if we start off with some introductions, who are you and what's your role in the industry today?
Sure. Kristy Knichel. I'm the CEO and president of Knichel Logistics. I started in the industry 28 years ago, working for my father initially as an agent company, and we opened Knichel together in 2003. And our focus here at Knichel is intermodal shipping, but we also have a full truck brokerage, and we also have LTL, and we do have an agent network as well.
That's fantastic. So to kind of take it all the way back, you mentioned with your father in the game, but what is it that made you want to make logistics your career kind of full time here?
I think I kind of fell into it like most people. So I do have a story behind that. I've always been a hard worker, no matter what I did. I did work release in high school, actually, to leave early and go to work. I always worked, 2 and 3 jobs. And at the time, I was actually running a couple pizza shops. And one of them, the owner wanted to sell the pizza shop. And I was 19. And I kind of knew what he made. And I think it's hilarious, but it's like $45,000 a year. And I'm like, hey, Dad, I want to buy this pizza shop. I think this would be a great investment for me. And interesting enough, he had owned his own pizza shop back in the day, and I didn't know he did, actually. It was like a bar restaurant, and he just said, you're not going to want to do that. You're going to have to work nights and weekends and holidays. Why don't you come work for me, and I can give you an opportunity, to learn what I do. And honestly, that was it. And I just said, you know what, fine, I'll do that, because he basically said, you'll make more money working for me eventually as we build this company. And I really didn't even know what he did, to be quite honest, at that time. Right. But yeah, that was it. I went to work for him. I actually still worked at the pizza shop for some time. But yeah, he was complaining about me quitting that job. And I'm like, you didn't pay me enough. You paid me $18,000 a year when I first started 28 years ago. So
that's fair. I want to dive in on that. That's really good points you brought up. But just the fork in the road. Any regrets not buying the pizza shop?
Yeah, exactly. No. The funny thing I talk about now is building this business up, and maybe one day when I sell it, I'll purchase a pizza shop or franchise or something, have someone else run it, right? Just to say that like I came full circle.
There you go. Fantastic. Well, it's kind of funny. I've got a similar start to you. I started off with a Godfather's Pizza, and I was there for entirely way too long. It was one of those ones that then I feel like if you're in like the pizza or restaurant industry for too long and then you try to get like some kind of a corporate job of any type, it's hard to make that transition because nobody wants to give you the experience without having experience.
Yeah. No, that is very interesting. I like Godfather's Pizza.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. I don't see them too much around here anymore, but they were definitely good. So I want to dive in on kind of that mentorship aspect, because it sounds like you had a kind of a unique upbringing with your father kind of being in the business world. How did that mold you? Like what insights did you have growing up into kind of being that business owner and running things?
Yeah, I would say initially I was very young. So I think it was challenging for me to really have like a vision at the time. I think the biggest thing that I did was I was willing to do anything he wanted me to do. And he went from, putting me in dispatch to collecting money to going on sales calls with him to eventually I was doing payroll. and HR, and then doing pricing and like all these different things. And I just had that mindset of doing whatever, needed to be done. And I think that is kind of where I was. And then I would say probably 5 years after that, I kind of knew like, at some point this is going to be something if I just, continue to do this. But I will say working with my father was very challenging. He was very tough on me. I always say this, it's a love-hate relationship at the time. Back in the day, he would stand behind me and, as I'm faxing paperwork, the trace reports back in the day, making sure I'm getting them out by 8:30 in the morning. And so it was a very interesting journey that, as much as the struggle was, and I hated the way that he treated me, I think because of what he did and how hard he was, well, I know it made me the leader that I am today. It made me tough.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like we hear that all the time from, the most successful people out there. You hate the push, but then in the hindsight, it's like it had its place, right?
Yeah,
But,
and it takes a long time though to get there and feel like it was actually worth it.
right, right. I think that's really cool. You mentioned kind of working in all those different various positions, dispatch, payroll, et cetera. And, we were kind of talking in the green room how we like to interview people from all across the industry because the logistics industry is huge and it's got so many different moving parts to it. And I think it's important for somebody going into this to be a business owner to really understand how all those different parts flow. Now you mentioned, having having that opportunity to work in all those different roles. Like that's a pretty unique experience. And it kind of, in my opinion, gives you a different sight of, how that all connects and then kind of brings it together in a grand vision. Do you feel like that's benefited you in your career to, be where you're at today and operate it?
Oh, absolutely. I think it truly benefits knowing how every role operates, the challenges of all the roles,
Yeah.
maybe how, easy certain jobs are, but how other ones are not as easy. And then I think the other part is I get a respect from the employees,
Right.
knowing that I've done what they have done and I'm willing to do anything that, they're having to do or deal with. I mean, even today, because of some of the things we're going through, I'm like, put me back in the seat. I'll help work with people and train, but I will say a lot of times people that are in my seat as CEO that haven't done that role, there's just a different dynamic there. I'm not saying that they can't do that, but I do think that, connecting with the people that are working for you, that's one way I think that we've been able to connect, because I have sat in that seat with some of those people that still work here today, from 20 some years ago. So I think it's extremely important for anybody to truly understand all the different aspects of your business.
Yeah. Now you said Knichel Logistics start was 2003.
Yes.
Can you talk us through a little bit of kind of the journey of getting that off the ground and maybe some of the bumps along the way?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So right before that, my dad was an agent for Cornerstone Systems. So we were doing a lot of the similar things, but so getting that off the ground, my dad didn't include me in a whole lot initially. I wasn't seeing like P&Ls and stuff like that, but I know one of the first bumps in the road that we had was, he actually remortgaged his house and took out $600,000 to start the business. And he was able to get the railroad contracts, which you can't really get today. He was one of the last people. I think there's only been a couple people since then to get the true railroad contracts, but probably within a couple months, because of the amount of business that we were moving, we ran out of cash. When you work with the railroads, they take their money in 14 days, and you're probably billing a customer at that point by the time you get the paperwork and billing and it's been delivered. So that was a unanticipated challenge. So then we had to quickly put together a business plan and present to bank to get a line of credit to continue to move the business. So with that being said, had to reach out to some of the railroads, hey, can you not draft the money yet? I need like a month to get some money into the company. And thank God, these carriers and vendors understood where we were at. But that was definitely probably the most challenging part. I would say the other piece was my dad actually built a homegrown system when we were initially starting up. And it was great to initially, I guess, learn from and move some loads, but it didn't have a finance piece. It didn't have other pieces that you truly would need as you're growing, because we were growing actually pretty fast. It was kind of something I don't think we realized was going to happen like it did. So
Yeah.
pretty fast, we had to then find a system that we had to purchase that had all these other pieces connected with the finance and whatnot so that we could actually truly run the business properly.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's kind of making me think with, businesses I've been involved in, different routes, different types of business, but the mind space aspect of it. One thing I get caught up in is the process, right? Like I'm so OCD. I want my process to be perfect before I ever get started. And I've been nitpick saying, well, you can waste so much time and lose so much opportunity being focused on that process and not doing. Kind of having the hindsight you have. I mean, you're on that fly, learning as you go. Do you feel like there's value, or I mean, it's probably a double-edged sword to a degree, but in your opinion, is there value in kind of perfecting that process or diving in and adjusting as you go?
I would say everything I've learned from my mentors, you have to dive into an extent. If you're at least, I would say 75%, because I've heard 70 and 80, 75% there, you need to go with it. And then you tweak as you go along the process, because you're never going to probably feel like you're 100% there. And then what happens is you delay yourself. And we've been through that here at the company, especially with some of the team that's been here a long time. As we're changing, right? It's like, hey guys, like we can't do it like we did 10 years ago. We have to we're 80% there. Let's go.
Yeah.
And then we'll tweak as we get there. We just got to take action so we can start moving, because you don't realize how much time gets wasted by not taking action. And that hurts the business even more by just not doing anything.
I love that. I think that's fantastic insight. That 75, 80% there. It's like you've got that firm foundation. But, the other thing is too, like every business and business model is kind of unique in a way. So it's like, if you bother getting it 100% there and then you get it in motion, you're always going to find something. It's like, that didn't run as smooth as I thought it was going to. So you leave yourself some room to build instead of have to undo and rebuild.
Right. I think that's the thing too, because we've made a lot of structure changes in the past, I would say almost year now, probably 3. And the first one was a major structure change. And I feel like we were definitely probably that 80% there, went with it. We took too long, in my opinion, to wait or to make a change saying this isn't working. Just keep trying to make it work, knowing it wasn't working, but we just had to kind of rip that apart again and start over. And but I think that's our rule here. It's like, if you're 75% there, so to speak, we just need to go with it and just work on it. Because again, there's times if you wait and say that you feel it's 100%, you're still going to find something wrong with that plan, no matter what it might be.
100%. Now, you're talking about some other mentors as well. In your kind of journey and path here, how have you come across the mentors that you have?
So I would say a lot of it was, my dad, he taught me a lot of things of what not to do. But in the same token, the work ethic and, learning some different pieces of the business, absolutely. But when it came to the financials and, when he put me in the CEO president position, didn't tell me what I was supposed to do. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I've said this many times. I even Googled one time, what does a CEO do? But I will say over the years, I had to, reach out. I went through Sandler sales, training, and I reached out to another guy who was like a mentor to work with me as a coach to help me figure out what am I supposed to be focused on. These are things I had to just do on my own because it wasn't necessarily given to me. I wasn't getting it from anywhere. But I also had a sense of like, I didn't want to reach out to other CEOs because I felt like they're going to think I'm stupid if I'm like, what am I supposed to be doing? Or how did you do this? How did you grow your company? All those things. So it took me a long time to get to that point where finally I did start reaching out to other CEOs of companies that have built a company larger than mine and just start asking questions. And to me, that was just gold because I didn't have that for a good part of my career. And once I started doing that and realizing that there were people there to help and work with me, that was probably, I would say like probably 2012, 2013 was probably one of the most important things that I have ever done because you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. And if you're not curious and you're not asking, you're going to have a lot of issues. It wasn't like my dad was pushing me and telling me because he was a sales guy at the end of the day. Right. That's what he knew. He was smart enough to open the business and get all this stuff started. But when it came to running things, we were on two opposite sides of the spectrum of how things should be done and how you do things. So that was a challenge where I had to learn. I knew it wasn't right, but I had to learn from someone else. So again, multiple resources, reaching out to people and having a coach for a period of time.
Yeah. I think there's so much gold there. It's something I've struggled with, and I think so many others across the industry, because that, imposter syndrome is real, right? And it, especially trying to come into a space and just, feeling like, oh, everyone else is blown out of the water. But the one thing I've learned along the way is, like, every time you see a successful person, well, not every time, but I'd say 99% of times you see that successful person, they have mentors in their path. And, just that fact of being able to, and it's a huge part of what the show's about, right? Is, learning from what others have already learned, because we don't need, there's so much you're going to have to learn and deal with on the fly anyways. There's a ton of it that we don't need to have to rebuild the wheel over, because other people have experienced it, can kind of give us that guidance to get started.
Yeah. And for some people, not just the imposter syndrome, but like putting aside like an ego or your pride and knowing that this is something that's going to help you. Because even today, in my 28th year, I have a CEO coach. I still have people that I work with that I mentor, but I also learn from them. And then again, I'm still reaching out to those people. We had a tough year last year, one of our toughest years I've ever had in my career. And some things have happened where I didn't know what to do. And I just started picking up the phone and making phone calls and talking about things that maybe someone would feel embarrassed to talk about, but it's like, I'm not going to let this, interfere with this business getting into a better, situation, because we're at a turning point now where my company's at 100 million revenue level, and it's a whole different way you have to run the business strategically, mind thinking, like all these different things. And overcoming that, especially the market that we've been in, and not being afraid to reach out to these people. And I've gotten a lot of help from a lot of different people on direction and what I should be looking at. And if it wasn't for that, it would be more challenging than what it was.
Yeah, I love that. You're mentioning kind of having that coach there as well. And, I think that falls into mentorship, but I think there's also that different aspect of it as well, because there's a point of it that I feel like you have to kind of disassociate, and it's less about, oh, this is what I'm doing versus the company. The company's got to stand on its own and how to get this going. But I think there's huge value there in having the that coach aspect, to be kind of that external view on, okay, because I mean, let's say like an email, right? Like we'll write an email and we'll read it over 100 times and it's perfect.
Yeah.
But then you go back the next day, it's like, what the hell did I write? It's good to have that external view, being like, actually, let's look at this over here in a different way.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think what I love about that too, it is someone that's not in the industry. He is a CEO of another company, and he's a serial entrepreneur, to be quite honest. And it's through a company called Pinnacle Growth Network. And they also have mastermind sessions that we have every month. And there's like 6 other CEOs in that session. So then we get to come with challenges or issues or questions, and then you get everyone's opinion, no matter what industry you're in. Business is business. And the things that we need to learn are all pretty much the same, no matter what business it is, so to speak. So when it comes to people and finance and operations, all these different things. So that has been very valuable. I also have my COO going through that same program. And the other thing is, we both meet with the same person, and then we meet together with him once a month to really hash out what's not working well, or say if I have something that needs to be pushed more on my COO, and talk with my mentor about it, knowing he's going to talk to him and work with him on that as well. And I also have, leadership coach for our other managers in the company as well, that we've, worked with a couple different ones, because again, they have to learn just like I learned, that they're going to learn so much from me and other people that are in the leadership team. But I do think it's important that companies do that for the key people in the company.
100%. So on past episode, we had a guy on here that had kind of shifted over industries. He was like in the medical based industry and then came into logistics. And he was talking about how they were able to bring a lot of like the technological aspects that were, flowing in the medical side that hadn't really come to trucking or logistics in general before. Have you noticed that working with those people outside of the logistics industry, to kind of like contrast and compare, like, well, in other industries, we're doing this type of stuff, and it's not really being done over here, and how can we implement that to, move and advance?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's the cool part, right? Learning what is out there that we don't already know that other
Right.
industries are adopting. So then it triggers your brain to be like, hey, can you give me your resource so I can work with that company too and see if they can help us in this arena. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's so important because I think some people have this mindset that if you need a coach or a mentor, it needs to be in the same industry. And that is not the case. I think it's good to have someone in the industry, but it's also really good to have lots of people outside the industry that you can also pick their brain and see how it's working over there. Because again, business is business, and we're all dealing with a lot of the same issues, regardless.
Yeah. So kind of along that same line of, coaching, mentorship, et cetera, it kind of brings to mind networking. In your experience and your, path in this journey in this industry, how important is networking, just getting to know people within the industry, outside of other industries, et cetera, building those connections?
Oh, it's absolutely it's probably the most important thing, I would say, besides mentoring, to be quite honest. When I was young, I wasn't one of those people that would just want to go up and talk to people. I was shy.
Yeah.
Dealing with the railroads, I was the only woman in the room of 60 to 100 people, and that can make it challenging, intimidating, especially at a young age. But I started connecting with a lot of people on LinkedIn, and the more meetings and conferences and things that I went to, it got me into a different kind of way of thinking, and these people coming to talk to me and learning from them. So I started to really build that network and push myself to talk to people, not just to talk to people, but then go to events and speak on panels,
Yeah.
doing podcasts, things that like literally made me sick to my stomach every time I would go do it. I remember like people asking me to speak, right? And I'm like, yes, I would love to. But in my head, I'm like, oh my God, this is not going to be awesome. This is going to suck, because that fear. But I had to push myself beyond that fear for a reason. And I will tell you today, since I've been in the industry so long now too, by building the network that I did, it has been so helpful, not just to the brand, but connecting other people that need to be connected with other people. And then if I need something, I can go to that network to get connected with someone else who has a need. And I utilize that network for everything. So it's really so important to build that network and have those people. You don't have to talk to them all the time. I mean, obviously you're going to have a group of people that are probably in that same circle, like because at Intermodal, for example, we go to a lot of those places, but then there's the brokerage side and I have different connections over there. But then those people will ask me about Intermodal or send me Intermodal opportunities, and vice versa. If I have something on the truckload side that I know that's not our thing, I'll send it to someone else I met in my network to handle. And I think that's where you truly get the value of helping other people. I love giving back.
Yeah, you nailed it there. I tell people all the time, it's only like half of it going out and building that network and meeting those people. And you don't realize it, just how much value there is in the back end that you never see, because you don't know when you meet, Joe over here, who he's going to talk to the next day or 6 months from now, et cetera. And he's going, actually, I know Kristy over here and she does this. You might want to, give her a shout. And, those conversations are unseen to you. So it's like you miss out on the value, but the value is there. Building that network, it expands. It's like a ripple effect.
It is. And I'll give you an example. Like yesterday, one of my operators over in the highway department, she actually posted on LinkedIn looking for a carrier to handle certain liquor loads and certain lanes. And I ended up reposting it and tagging her in it because I know my network will come and they will give us some solutions. And they did. And she found a carrier that could handle what we were looking for, because the brokerage piece is a smaller piece of our company. So it's not like we have, all these extra, connections out there in some of these lanes or whatnot. They did everything they could here. But, I told them all the time, like, use me so I can use my network to help you do your job better. But I'm also working with them on how to build their network as well and follow the companies or people that I do, and ones they aspire to be. I think that is really important. People that you aspire to become or be just like, whether it's a larger company or someone in a different role, you got to seek those people out and follow them, see what they're putting out there.
100%. To kind of put that in perspective for, somebody diving in to become that owner operator and build out their fleet, et cetera. I know there can be that limiting belief sometimes, like, well, I'm a carrier. There's not really a place for networking for me, et cetera. How do you feel like in that position? I mean, you're taking on, you're growing a business. You are the owner now. How important do you think that is in their position to make that effort?
Oh, I think it's absolutely important. And I'm going to do a plug here real quick, but the Broker Carrier Summit is something that came to be, this past year, or maybe the year before. I'm actually on the Women in Logistics Advisory Board for that group. And it's so important and awesome to see these carriers show up at this event to meet other brokers, or MATs, for example, even, going out and seeing not just the actual, people that own the companies, but as a driver to learn more about, who are you doing business with? Who can you get business with?
Yeah.
What are the different avenues out there for you? Because there are so many. They probably, I would imagine a lot of them don't even think about that. Are there places for us to go network? And again, there just becomes to be more and more, I think, as we continue to evolve in this industry, because the drivers are so key to what we do. I could not have my business if we didn't have drivers. I mean, and it's a shame that, unfortunately, a lot of them don't get treated the way they should still. I feel like there was a hot moment during COVID where everyone kind of understood, and I feel like it kind of got swept under the carpet. But I do think bringing brokers and carriers together is important, especially I feel like we do depend on each other in some cases. Obviously, there's ones that go direct to customers, but when you do need to get business, building those relationships is going to be key, because you can get that business direct with someone like myself if there's a need that fits in working together.
Definitely. Now, you being a female business owner, you're kind of mentioning the different boards and stuff you serve on. Trucking, logistics in some ways can still be looked at as kind of an old school minded industry in a lot of ways. What are some of the disadvantages that you've seen throughout your time in the industry for a women-owned company? And, how are we combating that moving forward?
So I would say, some of the disadvantages I just think there hasn't been a whole lot of women in the industry when I first started. Obviously, that has changed. There's not a whole lot in leadership still. That's something that needs to change, because I do think women do bring a different mindset. Nothing against the men out there at all, but I do think having that diversity between men and women can bring a dynamic that is very special to any kind of company to help them grow. And then, because there's a lot of skill sets women have that some men might not have, or vice versa. But
yeah.
I do think that's a really key part to an advantage of bringing women into the industry or into a company. I think some of the disadvantages, have been as well, just going to some of these events and stuff like that and being that only woman. Sometimes there is some harassment and things that have happened out there, and I've been through it too, but I think it's also learning to carry yourself a certain way so that you understand how to deal with it, because I wasn't taught that when I was younger. When I was dealing with it, I didn't know how to deal with it. Obviously, I've grown and I have dealt with it, and I think being a voice out there like I have been, and I do a podcast myself, empowering women into logistics. I think it's important because a lot of women have confidence issues. And I think if we can work together to build that up, it's important. And I think I would say an advantage too. So being woman owned, I kind of actually brought this to my dad back in 2012, because we were going into a bad year, 2013. And it's like, if we were woman owned, we'd have opportunity to work with the government, companies that had supplier diversity programs at the time. Doesn't guarantee you business, but it might get you actually an opportunity, because I think for being a smaller company in the space that we were in, some of these larger companies that you'd want to do business with don't really even look at you because of your size. But being woman owned, at least you got maybe some eyes on it. Again, it's not, it wasn't easy. It wasn't something that you're just going to get an opportunity. It's even maybe just getting on a bid, so you have the opportunity to even price something out and see where you compare to some of these other big companies that are out there. So I think that's been an advantage. And I think another advantage is it also brings people that want to work for me. I mean, to be quite honest, building the brand, being a woman out there in this industry when there's not a whole lot of us, especially in intermodal, for example, women that own companies that are doing this. So I think that also shows women out there that you can do this. Like, I didn't say this earlier, but I quit college. Like, I went to school. It wasn't my thing. When I started working for my dad, I quit college. So I had an opportunity, but I still had to do the job. So I think it also shows other women that you don't have to have that skills, or not the skill set, but like going to college to do what I do today. A lot of entrepreneurs did quit college or didn't go to college. And I think it's important that they know that that's out there. So I think as far as the future goes, we just need to keep advocating and putting that out there so that we do get more women in this space, and hopefully women continue to move up the ladder.
I love that. Fantastic insight. Now, kind of looking at the business side of things, Kristy, what do you feel like are some of the biggest financial hurdles for an owner operator getting started in the industry today?
I would say, I mean, the financial hurdles, I know there's a lot of companies out there that obviously, depending on the size, right, will help them with the truck, the payments, getting the trucks, stuff like that. I think one of the other challenges is, again, working with brokers out there potentially that aren't good brokers.
Yeah.
And really being able to vet those brokers and ensure that you're going to get paid, because I hate to see when companies go out of business. I mean, the guy that loses out or woman in the truck, that's who it tends to be, as we've seen that happen over the last, couple of years. Well, I mean, it's been every year, but significantly a lot more. So I do think that is a hurdle. And I think companies out there need to help these drivers a lot more so that they can be more independent and be able to, feel safe with knowing that you're working for a company that's going to back you and make sure you get paid, when you're doing that freight. I do know when carriers don't get paid, they can go after the consignee or customer for payment, because obviously there's been a lot of double brokering out there, or triple, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in the past, we might have gotten 1 or 2 a year that's happened. And, you feel awful when those things happen, because those guys are trying to make a living, and now they didn't know that they did that. I would say, if you're a carrier out there too, I think one of the most important things is know who you're working with. Because if you are taking a shipment from another potential carrier, or you don't really know them, you got to really vet these carriers out, just like we do as well. I know that there's no 100%, foolproof, even though we use Highway as our vetting tool, but I feel bad for the carriers that are stuck in that situation and they don't get paid because the first guy that gave them the shipment took the money and they're gone. So I think it's important for them to know who they're working with and who you're getting business from, and vetting them out.
100%. And yeah, I mean, there's tons of tools out there today that we've seen, between like industry credit checks and vetting tools like you were mentioning. I think that's definitely a huge baseline you have to take advantage of, because I mean, in this industry, we talked about going from that, company driver to owner operator. It's like, you can make a lot of money in this space, but it's also a space that there is a lot of expenses in. And, if you don't watch what you're doing and you make a mistake or wrong route, those expenses are costly and they can sink you fast.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, I can't think of his name right now. He was Dean Croak. He talks about know the cost of your truck. Like, know all those costs and expenses that you have, because most drivers, he will say, they don't know that. And you have to know that inside out so that you're not taking freight. Like we complain about all the time. Why is there a truck taking freight for such a low price? At the end of the day, I think if everyone stood firm with a certain price level there, you wouldn't be in this situation. But they need to know the price that they need so that they're making money at the end of the day.
Definitely. Now, in your experience, have you come across like common mistakes that owner operators have made when working with brokers that will impact their bottom line?
The only one that I can think of that comes off the top of my head again is really just taking freight to get some money and not what you truly need to make money.
Yeah.
I think that happens all the time, where you have some guy that's willing to just lowball everybody, and sometimes by $500, $600, $700, and you're like, there's no way they're making money on this. Maybe they're trying to make enough to pay a partial payment or something like that. But I would say I think they need to stand firm with what they need. The unfortunate part is we need to get some of these bad ones out of the market so that the ones that are really trying to work hard and do the right thing do get what they deserve to get paid at the end of the day. Don't continue to go low if you can't.
100%. Now, the last few years in the industry, I feel like has been kind of exciting. We're seeing a lot of different technology and different aspects coming into the industry, some waves being made, I guess you can say. What do you see in kind of the next few years of logistics that someone coming in as an owner operator building that fleet really needs to have their eyes on?
I really think that, it is, again, picking the right companies to work with.
Yeah.
Again, knowing what your costs are, looking at ways that you can make money with maybe it is not the common customer you used to work with, but picking the right customers. I mean, we went through that process ourselves this year. Some customers, just because you get the business doesn't mean it's good business.
Right.
Really evaluating who they're working with, to be quite honest. And then obviously like the technology on the trucking side, I know there's this whole talk about the driverless trucks and stuff like that. I still feel like that's far off, and there's a use for that in these smaller lanes. But I do think there's always going to be a need for a driver in that seat, moving freight. People like to talk to people, build relationships with people. Yeah. But I do think one of the most important things too, I would say, and is really building those relationships, going back to that we talked about. Know who you're working with. Build that relationship so you can get some long-term business and good business with good people, and don't make it just a transaction, because I think that's where a lot of the owner operators probably go wrong. It's, you might book one on a load and then they find a better paying load the next time. I mean, I get that whole supply and demand thing, but in the same token, building those relationships with those people, if you already took that load, then take the load, build that relationship. Because I'm sure a company is not going to want to reach out to that carrier again if you're falling off a load that you're already committed to. So I think that's important too, in building those relationships, because once you have them, that's how you're going to build your business and your reputation.
100%. Fantastic insight. Now, next 5 years or so, what's on the horizon for Knichel Logistics?
Well, I would say I have a goal to hit 300 million in revenue by 2030, which is a huge goal. I will say we, in our space, it's been hard for companies to even grow, but we are growing significantly right now, probably about 20% over last year.
Nice.
So happy to see that. But I also think, getting people is harder, and getting good people that want to work and have urgency. So I think, for us, it's going to be continuing to find ways to have efficiencies, using AI technology to automate as much as we can, the tasks that we can, and just kind of operate by exception as much as we can, and really have the people work with the customers and the carriers as much as we can, and try to take out all those other tasks. So we're going through that now as we speak, and that's going to be continuing. I think technology is going to be a huge piece of that over the next 5 years for me to continue to build the business up to that level. So,
heck yeah, man, that's exciting. Congratulations.
Yeah.
You guys are on the road.
We are. We're definitely trucking it down the road. That's for sure.
Love it. Love it. Well, we have tapped into a lot today, and I really, really appreciate you letting us kind of tap into your lived and learned knowledge that you've gained throughout your time in the industry. Anything you feel like we've missed on today important to throw in here?
I think the only thing I would just say, not that we missed anything, but I think it's important that people know to just stay course, ask questions, stay humble, be a good people person. It's a tough industry out there. And at the end of the day, the way I run my company, mistakes and things are going to happen, but I think it's, how you show up and work with people. So I think that's important, and just don't give up. Just keep pushing forward and ask those questions, because you can make a lot of money, like you mentioned, in this industry, no matter what role you're in, whether it's a driver, owner operator, sitting behind a desk, making all the stuff happen between the scenes. But it's important that, you show up with your best self and just keep focused on it.
Fantastic. Well, I want to give you a chance here for some shameless plugs. How can people find out about you? You've got a LinkedIn, company website, all that good jazz.
Yes, absolutely. So we are at knichellogistics.com online. We're on LinkedIn as well. That's pretty much where I live, is on LinkedIn. So you will definitely find me there. I have a lot of stuff that we put out. So that's it.
Fantastic. And we'll make sure to get all those linked in the notes below as well. Kristy, I want to thank you so much again for letting us take some time out of your busy schedule today to tap into that lived and learned knowledge. You've been fantastic.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, everyone out there, thank you so much for joining in. Make sure to like and subscribe. Check out the links below. Check out Knichel Logistics. There's a lot more to learn there. Until next time, stay safe out there. Have a great day.